I am so excited to be leading my second ultimate wine retreat to Walla Walla, Washington this April. And I want you to come with me. It's 3.5 days, over 8 unique wine tasting experiences, 2 extravagant, luxurious dinners, a special welcome bag full of goodies, new friendships, and a whole lot of laughter and fun awaits you on this can't miss retreat. But don't just take it from me. Here's what past guests on this retreat have to say. Take the opportunity. It is spendy, but worth it. It would be extremely difficult to arrange this kind of immersive experience on your own. Another said, I was surprised by the beauty and quality of everything we did. I didn't know much about Walla Walla and had no idea how stunning the tasting rooms were. And finally, one said it was so relaxing to just have an expert plan and curate the entire trip. I felt like I was a kid on a trip that my parents planned in the best way possible. Simply put, this is the escape you've been waiting for. Tickets for this retreat are the lowest they'll ever be at just $2,500 for the entire trip. And that includes 4 nights at the Finch Hotel. But there are only 8 spots left, so act fast. If you want to learn more and potentially sign up, head to my website, corkandfizz.com, and find the tab at the top that says Walla Walla Retreat. I will also have the link in the show notes. I am so excited to see your application roll in. Interested in learning about wine, but not sure where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I'm your host, Haley Bowman, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a wine enthusiast turned wine educator and founder of the Seattle-based wine tasting business, Cork and Fizz. It is my goal to build your confidence in wine by making it approachable and lots of fun. You can expect to learn everything from how to describe your favorite wine to what to pair with dinner tonight, and so much more. Whether you're a casual wine sipper or a total cork dork like myself, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a glass and let's dive in. Today, I have a really fun interview for you. I will be introducing you to the wife and wife team of Mireia Taribó and Tara Gomez, founders and winemakers of Camins to Dreams in Santa Rita Hills in California. Camins to Dreams was founded in 2017. Their grapes are sourced from vineyards in Santa Barbara County with a focus in Santa Rita Hills. Their philosophy is to make handcrafted, terroir-driven wines that are fermented with natural yeast and use minimal intervention in the winery, with only minimal amounts of SO2 at bottling. Their wines are also unfined and unfiltered. They believe wine is made in the vineyard, and they want to showcase the typicity of each site where the grapes come from. They source fruit from vineyards that share in the same values of respect for the land and respect for their workers. Now, before we get into the interview, I want to share a quick reminder. If you are not on my mailing list yet, I would love for you to join. When you do, you'll get a free shopping guide that has 15 of my favorite wines under $15. Head to corkandfizz.com, scroll down to the bottom, and there'll be a section where you can join the mailing list. I send out a weekly newsletter filled with wine tips, recommendations, special offers, fun learnings on wine, and so much more. And of course, be sure to check out my virtual tasting club, The Cork Crew. It's your opportunity to taste wine with me and the entire club from the comfort of your own home. We get together twice a month. We get to try new wines and also learn from people in the wine world, like winemakers, sommeliers, and authors. It's basically like listening to one of these interviews, but you actually get to be there in the moment and ask your questions. Want to give this a try without the commitment? You're in luck. Right now, I'm offering a free class pass to anybody who wants to try out the Cork Crew. With this pass, you'll be able to join a Cork Crew event of your choosing. No strings attached. I don't need your credit card. I don't need you to sign up for a membership. You will be my guest. The pass is basically like your golden ticket. Simply head to corkandfizz.com/free class pass to get your class pass. All right, without further ado, let's get into the interview. Hello.
Hi.
Whoa.
I love the background. It's definitely giving the right feels there with the oak barrels. Great spot to do a wine interview.
Yeah, we're in our tasting room.
Right, a little bit of everything. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to learning more about the winery and more about you guys in general too. So do you want to just talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So I'm Mireia, 50% of Camins to Dreams. And who we are, or how do we start it, or how, I mean, because we're two, so it's like a different story. So I'm going to start how I started in the wine industry, and then I can go explain her part. But how I started, I'm originally from Spain. I'm from Catalonia. And over there, we have wine surrounding us all the time. At least in my family, they love wine. They love having wine for lunch, for breakfast, for dinner. And I've always been tasting wine since I was a kid, not drinking it, but being at home, like there was always wine on the table. So I was like always tasting wine. And my parents used to go also a lot wine tasting. But I think what sparked more my idea of coming into the wine industry was my great grandparents planted a vineyard a long time ago. And I remember when I was a kid, going to harvest it and food stomping it and having a day of fun, just like with the grapes and kind of like a family affair, all the family together. And then we would make 1 barrel a year. So it was like super tiny vineyard, but it was just like more for own consumption and share with friends and family. So then when I was time to go to school, I really never thought about like, oh, let's study winemaking. I didn't even know that was a thing, but I love chemistry and I went to study chemistry. But I soon realized that I really didn't want to be in a lab all my life. Tara says that I always break everything, which is kind of true.
Butterfingers.
But also, like, I'm a really impatient person. I don't like to be always sitting in the same place or like not moving or, like always like working on the same. So I actually finished my degree in enology in chemistry, and then I started to study enology because I wanted something that still had like the chemistry background and the science, but also that had like more nature and outdoor, and it was like more active. So then, yeah, I studied enology, and when I was ready to graduate it, I wanted to do an internship abroad, and I landed in California in sunny Paso Robles, and that's how I met Tara. We met at Jailor Winery in Paso Robles. I was an intern there and became friends. And when my internship finished, I went back home. I went back to Spain and invited her over. And then we started traveling together and visiting wine regions. And I would come here. She would take me all over California to visit and taste different wineries. And when she would come to visit me in Spain, I would take her all over Spain or like all over Europe, basically France, Germany. And that's how we fell in love. And a few years later, I moved here. And a few years later, we started Camins to Dreams in 2017. And yeah, that's where we are now. But I'm gonna pass it to Tara, and she can explain how she started.
Yeah, well, I'm Tara Gomez, the other half, co-founder, co-winemaker of Gomez and Dreams. And for me, it was at a really early age that kind of which led me into the wine industry. It was like I was like 4 years old when I got my first Fisher Price microscope set, and then it grew into chemistry set. So science was always something that kind of like stayed with me at a very young age. And so like by grade school, like I knew that I either wanted to be a chemist, a marine biologist, or a winemaker. And then with my parents, just wine connoisseurs, like none of my family was ever in the wine industry. Like I didn't know anything about it other than going with them on the wine tours when they used to go wine tasting up and down the Central Coast. And the connection to that was me going on one of the tours and seeing them in the lab and doing titrations, which is the chemistry side of it. And so that really intrigued me and it really stuck in my mind. And so I already knew by high school that this was going to be my calling. And I started researching schools. And back then in the 90s, it was either UC Davis or Fresno State. And so I'm very hands-on as well. And I chose Fresno State because I wanted that hands-on experience because they already had a winery on campus. So I wanted that hands-on training. So yeah, I graduated out of Fresno State in enology. And then I worked here in the Central Coast, got my first job at Fess Parker Winery, which is where I did my internship in like 97. And yeah, been in the industry since and never changed or decided to go a different direction. Like I said, it was something that I knew at such an early age that this was something that I knew that I wanted to do. And it's something that really makes me happy. Like I love making wine. It's like I'm really passionate about it. And I just love the fact that no vintage is ever the same because you can't control, the weather, you can't control Mother Nature. And so you just kind of got to go with it as to what the different types of weather brings. I always say like we're like forecasters during harvest time because we're constantly looking at the weather. But that's what like intrigues me.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I love that both of you came at this from like that science background, but then also that it's not common. I find so many more people fall into wine right at a later time. They usually like will do some job and then they'll be like, but then this happened and then I fell into wine. It's very cool. You're like, yeah, at 4, I knew it was science and I knew it was like, I had, the marine biology, I had this, or winemaker. Very clearly, I love that was an option, even at that point, that it was recognized that, the science could lead to winemaking, which is super fun and great to have that family background too. But it makes a lot of sense that like you guys would love winemaking as in like the need to like, yeah, we could be a scientist and sit in a lab, but I need the science plus the movement and the action. And I mean, at a winery, there's always action going on, right? So I'm sure you're never bored at this point, working in a winery. So we talked a little bit about what sparked your interest in wine. I'd love to get into the details of how you got from, that interest in wine and starting as interns and working at wineries to then how did you create Camins to Dreams and get to, just starting your own winery? What did that look like?
Well, I think for both of us, it has always been a dream of ours to one day have our own winery, to own our own winery. And so I think what kind of started that was that we had an opportunity that came up of being able to make wine one year. And we were fortunate that another winery allowed us to come in and make that wine. And so along with that, we made it that year with them. And I was telling Mireia, like, okay, the timing is like now, like we're going to start doing this. And we only brought in, what was it, like 1 ton?
The first year, 2017 was 1.5 tons. We did 90 cases of wine.
It was a Syrah.
Yeah, a Syrah.
A cool climate Syrah from Santa Rita Hills. And so that's what kind of started Camins to Dreams. And then that winery moved to a bigger winery. And so that space became available. And we only had like 2 barrels of wine and the opportunity to have this building. And I was just like, I guess I'm the dreamer in the relationship. And she's the one that,
makes the numbers and puts our foot in the floor. Not gonna happen.
But I was like,
she was determined that we were opening a winery.
This is gonna happen. It's like now or never. Like this perfect opportunity came up for us, and so we did. Yeah, we jumped in with
more than me.
Tara like jumped head first, and like Mireia's like, I'll dip my toes in a little bit. I don't know.
We've always wanted to have our own, definitely, because like when you're a winemaker, you want to, experiment and do things different. And when you work for someone else, you can do a little bit, but not everything. And it's always a dream, I think, of most of small winemakers or winemakers that are in small wineries to have like a label in the side or things like this. So yeah, we started in 2017 with these 2 barrels. And the thing is that when the opportunity came, it was just like, she was like, we're not going to find another building that it's like key ready, right? Turnkey. Like there was already like a winery there. So yeah, we had to do like some work there, but it wasn't nothing crazy. There was drains, there was a cold room. So most of the important work was already done. So it was more a matter of like, how are we going to finance this? Because like definitely with 90 barrels, you can even pay the rent of a building for a year. So with 90 cases. And then it takes like also like so long, right? To to create a brand and then release it to the market and start making like any income, even though you're not making money, but you're still getting. So
a few years just to get started anyway.
So we started really small and grow small. We're like slowly growing. We did like, 90 cases and then 200 and then 500, I think. And then we did again 300 because COVID hit and we're like, oh, what's going to happen? And then we've done a couple of years of 1,500 cases right now. So like right now, it's the moment where we're trying to grow a little bit more, open a little bit more of distribution.
It's so cool. I have to say, just looking and seeing like all the barrels behind you, as you say, like we started with 2 barrels and like how cool it is to just like see that, right? And like how exciting it's like. It does start with a dream. And obviously you need the logistics to work out too. But, this all did start with a dream. And so I'm wondering, maybe that's my next question was going to be, where did the name Camins to Dreams? Hopefully I'm saying it right. I keep saying Camins slightly differently. It's Camins to Dreams. Where did the name come from?
So like that was like the hardest part of like trying to come up with a name that represented both of us and had so much meaning to both of us. So Camins translates to path in Mireia's Catalan language. So the path to our dreams. And we don't even have.
Oh, I have a bottle here. I've got the one here. Yeah.
So the logo is like a vine and it really shows the roots because we're both deeply rooted within our own cultures. And also too, just representing the aspects of the vineyard and the vines being deeply rooted as well. And it's kind of like a round logo, meaning that we come from 2 different parts of the world. And there's like a little yin and yang on one of the
if you see the turquoise leaf, it's like you can see like how it's like the yin and yang there. So that representing balance.
Us. So we're kind of opposites of each other, but we balance each other.
Yeah. The name, why the path to dreams, as I said, like we start traveling together. Once we met, she would come along with me in Europe, traveling, visiting different wine regions, and I would do the same here. So it's through all the path and routes that we took that led us to our dream winery, where we are now in her hometown.
Oh, that's so
making
sweet.
wines.
I'm curious too, that now that you talk about it, like in all the places that you visited, right? And you traveled in many places, and you're obviously being from Spain, but being from California. What was there something that made you choose California and Santa Rita Hills as like the place where you were going to have the winery? Or was it kind of just circumstance it worked out that you ended up there?
I think like at that time we were like trying to decide, okay, who would be a better fit to move to kind of like readjust. And at that point in time of our lives, it was Mireia moving here because she already spoke the language, and me, like, they speak Catalan where Mireia comes from, and I still don't know Catalan. And so that was part of the reason, but also too, we're such huge fans of Northern Rhone that we felt that Santa Rita Hills is something similar to that. And we're only 10 minutes from the ocean.
In terms of cold climate, terroir.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, fun. I like it. Well, and speaking of like Santa Barbara, I'm curious. So I took a trip there, and I think it was last year. And then just like with what wines I've been drinking, and I noticed there are a lot of, like, it seems like there's a larger concentration of female winemakers in Santa Barbara and in that area. And I'm just curious, like, one, do you think that's a fair observation? I might just be starting to direct towards those people and like drinking their wine. So maybe not, but do you notice that as well? And do you think there's anything special that about Santa Barbara and about that region that you're in that kind of encourages this diversity?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's a fair observation. We are one of the largest, if not the largest wine region with female winemakers or women in led positions in the wine industry. So definitely a lot of us, and a lot of us have like super small labels, so they still work for someone else, but that number is growing every year. And why? I think it's experimentation. I think it's a newer wine region that's coming up. It's already up there. It's already been recognized, but it's still like really open to anybody that comes from other areas and to experiment with any kind of variety.
Yeah, I mean, like we have over 75 different varieties here in Santa Barbara County. And within like a 30-mile radius, you could be enjoying your Bordeaux's, or you could be enjoying your Burgundies or your Rhones or Italian varieties. Like you don't have to go far to enjoy all the different microclimates that Santa Barbara County offers.
Well, speaking of the different wines, so looking at the website and some of the wines that I've tried, you guys have quite a variety of options that you offer, and it's so interesting. So I have in front of me, I found this bottle that I bought, I think a year or two ago. This is the Carignan. I never say that right. The Carignan 2021 Santa Ynez Vineyard Happy Canyon. But I've also had your Albarino, the Gruner Veltliner. I know you do. I saw Graciano on the website, and you've been talking Syrah. So I'm just curious, do you want to talk a little bit about how you choose the wines to make? And then selfishly, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about the Carignan if you remember about it. But maybe just start with the, how do you choose which wines that you're going to make?
So when we started just with Gruner and Syrah. Syrah, because we love Northern Rhone, as we say it, and cool climate Syrah, and specifically that's great here in Santa Rita Hills. And then for Gruner, it was mostly like everybody here is doing Pinot Chardonnay. We didn't want to make Pinot Chardonnay because everybody else is doing it. And we kind of like wanted to show other varieties, teach people that there's other things to drink, and focus on that underrepresented grapes, right? So there was like starting to be like some vineyards planting Gruner here, and we tasted a few of the wines. The characteristics were literally what we look for, like, which is high acid, minerality, really food friendly wines. So that's how we started, and we make like different Syrahs and different Gruners every year. Vineyard designated. Yeah. We do even like a still and a sparkling Gruner, so we do up in that. And then slowly we've been adding other varieties that we like, that we feel like they're cool, like they're different, people is not too familiar with, and we want to showcase. So that's where Gamay or Carignan or Albarino or, you say Graciano, that we do for our wine club. Every year we do some cool variety for our wine club too. This year started making Mencia.
Oh, Mencia, that's cool. Okay, I've loved that from Spain.
How do we choose the varieties of the vineyards? That's mostly we look for vineyards that are organic, regenerative, biodynamic, that have the same philosophy that we have with the wine. So they have it with the vineyards. So that's really important, that the vineyard, it's going to be our future. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, basically, as Mireia said, we just really like focusing on the underrepresented varieties. And we love to teach other people new varieties away from the norm of what they're used to tasting. And so we're constantly looking for those type of varieties here in Santa Barbara County. And now we just started venturing out into San Benito County. And so that's where the Mencia came from.
Very fun. Okay, so speaking of like teaching people about it, can you talk a little bit about the Carignan? I know you probably don't remember all the details, so it's a 2021.
Yeah, that's our 2021 Carignan.
That's our first vintage of Carignan. So.
Yeah, I always wanted to do 100% of Carignan. We visited, southern France and toured through there, and I think that's when I first started falling in love with Carignan, the Languedoc area, and so I wanted to do like 100% Carignan, like that was my baby. And so, we found this vineyard here in Happy Canyon, AVA, and fairly new vineyard, Santa Ynez Vineyard. And we started making it in 2021. And so it's 50% carbonic maceration to 50% destemmed. And so, as Mireia said, we always make a wine every year for our wine club members. That's exclusively for wine club. And so we decided to do 100% Carignan, carbonic maceration Carignan for them. And so we put aside like 2 barrels, and then the rest of that went into the normal blend wine that we make. So that's
how we make it, and then
how we made it. And 10 months in the barrel of aging in neutral French oak barrels. And then
the idea is that our wines are food friendly, they're light, they're vivid, fresh. And this Carignan specifically comes from a really hot area. And Carignan does great in hot areas, but it's also why it's used more for blending. It's like it has like high alcohol, like high tannin, a lot of color. So we wanted to make something a little bit lighter, a little bit more of our style. So we picked a little earlier, retain a lot of acidity, and then do this 50% carbonic, which kind of like lift up all the aromatics. And
yeah, absolutely. I can taste that in this. It's interesting.
That's just it. You don't see it too often.
Yeah, but it's super fun. I
variety,
do. I get that exact thing. Like you said, when I first tasted it, it was definitely like, it's on that lighter side for red in a really lovely way, that like light to medium bodied, where like you're just like, it's like that thing to me where like Pinot Noir, I can pair it with almost any food. Like this kind of has that same feel to it, where I'm just like, any dinner that I'm just enjoying, I could throw this Carignan with and I know it would just like work really well. The fruit is really nice. It's funny. I'm curious on like you did 50-50 carbonic maceration. But I'm just going to take advantage of this moment here because I still don't fully understand carbonic maceration. So can you just talk a little bit about that? I've noticed with some wines, 100% carbonic is not always my favorite, but I really enjoy this wine. So I'm curious on that 50-50. But first, I guess, what is the carbonic maceration? Like, how is that different in the winemaking?
So carbonic maceration is pretty much fermentation within the grape berry itself. So we bring the fruit in from the vineyard. We do a sort of removing material other than grape. It's still whole cluster, and it goes into this tank, whole cluster into this tank, and then we put a little bit of CO2 at the top of it for the first couple of days, but seal it off completely, so no oxidation. And then the fermentation starts to happen within the grape berry itself. And so what that brings is a lot of freshness to the wine. It helps, I mean, with the whole clusters, you're getting that spiciness, a little bit of that spiciness as well. And so we generally close it, the fermentation lasts for like 30 days, but we basically don't really do much to it. Except just like monitor it once it begins fermentation and making sure that nothing else happens to it, VA or any sort of microbial issues in the wine. And so that's all we're doing, is just tasting it for that and monitoring the fermentation for that 30 days.
Yeah. So what happened is at the beginning of the fermentation, as she said, like all the fermentation is inside the berry, but as the berries keep fermenting, they get a little soft, the skins get softer, so they start breaking and the bottom of the tank starts producing some juice. So then when we open the tank after a month, if you open it from the top, it's all berries. You don't see any juice, but there's still a little bit of juice in the bottom, which is like what's keeping the fermentation alive. And then we just like basically jump into the tank. We foot stomp it because we like to foot stomp everything. So we foot stomp, break the grapes, and then we open the door and put it into the press and press it.
Very fun. I love that you add like you foot stomp everything just because you're like, you have to do the fun stuff too when you're making the wine.
Yeah, it's fun at first, like, when you first start harvest, but having to do that every day and on everything,
that is fair.
Kind of gets old a little fast. Yeah. But I must admit, it's a good workout for sure. Yeah. You don't need no gym class for that.
So I'm going to ask a difficult question, but I think for people that are listening, if they want to try your wines, right, and they're looking to maybe get 3 bottles, which 3 would you recommend that you think are like the 3 together are a good kind of representation of Camins to Dreams?
I mean, I would say definitely Gruner and Syrah. And we have a lot of Gruners, a lot of different Syrahs, but definitely one Gruner, one Syrah, because that's been our flagship like since we started.
Fiddlesticks Vineyard.
Yeah, Fiddlesticks Vineyard, Gruner. We just released a new Syrah, which is Donica Vineyard, that it's tasting really good now. It's still super young.
2022.
It's a 2022, but it's tasting really good. And then I would say I wouldn't pick a third one like as a flagship, but like Carignan is great. If you want something more spicy, Gamay. If you want something like more tannic, a little bit more full body, the Grenache.
I like it. So it's like, actually, there's 2 that you definitely got to try, the Gruner Veltliner and a Syrah, and then kind of go wild on the third. Pick what sounds good to you. Well, that Syrah sounds wonderful. The smile that came on your face, Tara, when she mentioned the Syrah definitely made me be like, I got to try that Syrah.
Yeah, I think the smile came because we just like a few days ago just went through and started figuring out our 2023 vintage. We just tasted through all our 2023s, and the 2023 Donica Syrah just like really stood out.
Yeah,
it's tastes like it's one of those that I know, I'm confident that's going to be.
It's difficult to taste wines in this stage. Like we tasted every single barrel last week, and sometimes it's difficult because wine is going like through a lot of changes, and now it's still like really young. It just finished fermentation, and so it's like normally it's like, yeah, the wine is good. We'll see how it changes because it can change a lot. But this one was like, okay, yeah, it is really good. Yeah. It's already really good and it's really young. So we're hoping. But the 22 that's already in the market, yeah, it's everybody's been loving it. So
I always say too, when we're tasting, it's like, when it's going through through those stages of aging, I call it like a love and hate relationship, because there could be some days that you taste it and you're just like, wow, like this is awesome. I'm loving this. And then there could be other days that you go back and you taste it and you're like, what the hell? Like what happened here?
Yeah. There's another winemaker here in Washington, Damsel Sellers. She mentioned she calls it the teenage phase for the wine, because it's like there are moments when like it's great and it's wonderful, and then just like you said, exact thing where it's like you come back the next day and you're like, the hell, is this the same wine?
So I think that's like part of the reason why we wait to make our blends, like as we keep everything, all the lots separate, which is kind of like hard to do, but we do it. We keep all the lots separate and we wait till it goes through all the ups and downs of aging process before we start blending things together and figuring out like exactly the final blends of them all. But it's always just cool to like get a little peek at it, like, right after secondary fermentation. And quite surprisingly, like mostly all of our lots just finished secondary fermentation, malolactic fermentation. So yeah.
Wow. Very exciting. Do you ever find yourself standing in front of the wine aisle at the grocery store, feeling completely lost and overwhelmed? Don't worry, you're not alone. But what if I told you that I have a way to transform the wine aisle from overwhelming into an endless sea of joy and discovery? And it involves drinking wine and joining the most welcoming and fun community. In my Court Crew Virtual Tasting Club, we're all about exploring new and exciting wines in a fun and supportive community. No more feeling intimidated or stuck in a rut of buying the same bottle of wine. Each month, we explore 2 new wines, so you can broaden your palate and explore new flavors. Not only will we taste these wines together, but we'll learn about where the wines come from, essentially traveling the world all through the wine in our glass. Come join the Court Crew, and you'll have the opportunity to taste new wines, meet winemakers and other wine professionals, and connect with like-minded wine lovers from all over the world. Imagine the joy of discovering a new favorite wine and being able to confidently choose a bottle that you know you'll love. So, why not join us? Head to my website at corkandfizz.com/thecourtcrew to sign up. And don't forget to use code WINE101 to get your first month free. And now, back to the show. We did want to talk about one other thing. So you guys talk about finding organic vineyards. And then you also mention, on the website in the intro, minimal amounts of SO2 at bottling and making them unfined, unfiltered. Just curious to learn a little bit more about why did you choose to do this? What difference does this make in the wine? And do you guys consider your wine natural wine?
Yeah, I consider it more on the side. Mireia doesn't like using the word natural because
that's fair. That's why I asked too.
No, but it would be like in between the standards of natural wine. Definitely, our wine, it could be considered natural, and a lot of people labels it like that. I just don't like the word, but we even use it ourselves because that's something that people understands. But yeah, definitely, it's wild yeast, no additives, unfined, unfiltered. So it's like everything that would an organic vineyard. So that's what it's natural wine. The only thing that we add is a little tiny bit of SO2 right before bottling to protect it. But yeah, that's about it.
Have you noticed, what's the inspiration behind doing that? And, did you notice a difference in wines that choose to be made that way?
So for me, I've tasted, I've been through so many of those styles of winemaking in my years here in California. When I first got into the industry, it was like the big and bold, the better, and high alcohol was like the end game. And going and visiting Mireia a lot and tasting, more of the European wines, I started to really fall in love with that and just understanding it more. And now I see it becoming more and more accepted here. You see more winemakers kind of going that route. And for us, like, we do native yeast fermentations, separating all the vineyard lots. Like when we do our sampling, we separate each vineyard lot and create the starter, the pied de cuve. So when the fruit comes in, you already got that starter going for that particular vineyard. So you pitch that.
Oh, interesting. So would that be like, is that similar to like people have like, I think of like with sourdough starter, when you say starter, is that like a similar kind of idea?
Yeah. Similar, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so yeah, I mean, yeah, we believe that we do need to add a little bit of SO2 because we want it to help it get to bottle, because it kind of gets beat up along the way and you don't want to oxidize it. So we do add it right at bottle, but just like a minimal amount just to help get it to bottle and to help preserve it for a little bit, because we do want it to last a long time. And we're really lucky that where we live, the soil profiles and everything, that it allows us to have lower pHs, higher acids. So it's perfect for our natural winemaking.
Yeah. And then I think also we wanted to make wines that really represent where they're coming from, right? Like that focus on the vineyards and on the terroir and the variety itself, showcase the variety. So not adding anything to the wine, it allows us to really showcase that variety and from where it comes from. With the Syrah, we have, I would say, like different vineyards, and the Gruners the same. And the vineyards that we source fruit from, they're like literally a mile from each other. And the wines come totally different. And that has something to do with, obviously, the farming that they do, a little bit of the orientation, a little bit the soil, but the soils are really similar. So it's just more like what's in the grapes itself, the yeast that's already on those grapes, or like why, I don't know, like Syrah from wine vineyard, it's a little bit different than another one, right? So that's what we really want to showcase.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like that's the mystery of it. I had a couple on here. They are making wine in Virginia. Yes. And they're, they talked about the same thing. They're like, we have two vineyards that are like a mile apart, if that. And it's amazing that like they're making the wine the exact same way. They only had one way to make it at one point. There was a Sauvignon Blanc, and they did the same thing to both of the wines, but it didn't matter. They both turned out totally different because of just like that starting, where they started in the terroir of that. And I feel like that's like the magic of like some people like, I definitely like get the idea of like some like roll their eyes at the idea of terroir, but it's like, it's proof. You taste the two different and you're like, you can't say that it's not happening.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we like to showcase that here in the tasting room, have our maps out showing them where each vineyard site is. We also have the soils here in the tasting room too, so they could see like the different soil profiles, which sometimes could be similar, but sometimes they're not similar. And just really like teaching them just about Santa Barbara County in general.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's something I like to geek out on. So I want to share that with other people that come through.
No, and I'm sure that's a very special experience. Those are my favorite tasting rooms and wineries to visit, when you get to kind of dive deeper down into it a little bit. It's like, I could taste wine. I can do that at home. Like, give me something a little special when I get to go to the winery. So, all right. So before we get to the final little speed round that I do with everyone, is there anything new and exciting that you're working on that you want to share, or anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to share about?
Well, we do a couple of collaborations. Yeah. Also, we have one with Maker Wine, which is the canning company that we make the Albarino for. But we also are making wine for Go There Wines, which is some friends of ours that decided that they wanted to showcase winemakers as well, more of the underrepresented winemakers, and they come from all over the world, from Syria, from Lebanon,
South Africa. So yeah, and then us from here,
and us from the United States.
But yeah, we've been working for them like a few years. We make different varieties. We made Syrah for them. We're making Cab Franc now. We may change the variety for next year. But it's also more like a social project, I would say, for them. They really want to help these winemakers, like sell their wines and be known. And so they explain a lot their stories. all the bottles have like a kind of like a really catchy
QR.
phrase, a QR with their video and a story behind the label, but also like a phrase like that really identifies
Each winemaker.
Yeah, so it's a great project, and their idea is like once they start, like they just started a couple of years ago. So their idea is once they start like selling more of the wine and having a little bit more of like the revenue and stuff, like to give back to the winemakers or give back portions of the sales to the winemakers again. So it's a really cool project and really good wines that you normally don't taste. Not only ours, but like there's wines from Lebanon, from this winemaker from Syria that's in exile in Lebanon. There's like winemakers from Georgia, and they're really good. They're sold here online in United States. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll add the website for that in the show notes. So Go There Wines, and then you also make I've totally forgot about the maker wines, but I've definitely seen you guys there before. The canned wine as well. That's like, it's like you can have really great quality wine in a can. I think that's so fun.
That's another great project that their focus is to explain the stories of the winemakers. So each winemaker makes a different wine for them, and they can it, and it's really cool because it's easy to take and it's easy to buy. They're like the slim cans, so they're like smaller cans. So it's really easy to like have a glass of this, have a glass of that, and just share it with friends and take it on the go.
Yeah. Super fun. Okay. Yeah. I'll put links for all that in the show notes. Also for you guys for buying online as well. And so people can come find you if they're ever in Santa Barbara. I do this little speed round. I call it a speed round simply because like, don't think too hard on the questions. Otherwise it would be like too challenging. It's just meant to be like kind of what's top of mind and what you're thinking about. So the first one is, what is your favorite wine at the moment?
At the moment, from ours or from?
It can be anything. It can be from you or it can be from someone else, whatever kind of comes to mind.
So not too long ago, it was for my birthday. We opened up a wine from Ribera Sacra, Alguera, which is cortezada. It's a white wine with Albarino, Trechadura, Godeo. It was a really fun wine that I really enjoyed, and yeah, that's mine.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
And for me, I don't think I can choose a favorite because I can never choose any favorites in my life. So I'm like that. I'm really like one here, like the other day is theirs. But I've been a lot into Jura wines lately. So like I've been like wanting to taste a lot of Jura wines, which are like sometimes difficult to find. But yeah, like I would say that like I've been just like finding those varieties around here. So.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I love that you bring up Jura. Jura is such a fun region, and I'm trying to like get more people to try it. Though at the same time, I'm also like, I want more people to try it so I can find it more easily. But also, it's like the prices will start going up as well once more people know about it.
It's an international wine that is still like, it's not crazy on price still here. So like at least the wines that we get in California are not crazy. So
it's like find the right balance between.
And they're fresh, they're lighter style, which I love. So
yeah, it's really, really good. Okay, so now I'm going to ask your favorite wine region that you've ever visited.
So I'll start because it was recent, and that's why that wine came to mind. It was Ribera Sacra, and I had a moment out there in the vineyard that was just like unbelievable. Like if you were to go there and see the percent of slope that they have to work with, it's like insane. And it was even difficult to go out to the vineyard and just try and walk it in general because it's such a steep incline. And in order to have it with Ribera Sacra label on it, it had to be like a certain percentage of slope. You remember what that was?
30%.
30%, 40% slope. And so everything is completely done by hand. You see so many abandoned vineyards there because the older generation, like to have to do everything by hand, it's like insane. And to have to walk and pick like the way that they do that is unbelievable. And then you have to put it on a boat and then take it to wherever your winery is along that river there. So I just had like a super big appreciation for the newer generation that's coming online and wanting to take over the family vineyards, that their parents, had back in the time, and taking over some of the abandoned vineyards too, because it's super intense, like the amount of work that that they do out there. And you go and you see the price points and they're so low. It's just like, I feel so bad for them because of all the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into those wines from Ribeira Sacra.
Yeah. And remind me again, geography-wise, Ribeira Sacra, that's Spain, right?
Spain, Galicia.
So Galicia, but inland. So people, it's probably pretty familiar with Rías Baixas, which is Alvarinho, which is in the coast. So a little bit more inland, you have Ribeira Sacra, yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, I know. It is amazing, isn't it? When you look at like a lot of the European areas that are making wine and like when you do, and then you look at the price too, and especially I'm sure Spain kind of hits this, or this happens a lot in Spain of just like, wow, you did all that work. And like, I get to enjoy this for like $20-$30, right? Like it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel right almost. Okay. Mireia, how about you?
Favorite wine region? I don't like to pick things, right?
I know. You're going to have a hard time with some of these speed round questions. It's more like bring up something that you like.
I'm going to pick one now, but I mean, from all the travels that we've done, I've always said that the Moselle and Burgundy was like my two favorite travels, like for like tasting wines. But I'm gonna go with Burgundy now because I loved it when we went there. It was winter, the vineyards were like top at the moment, but everybody was pruning. It was just like so amazing to see like everybody with working the land, like with the horses and then pruning and doing like this fire in the vineyard, like burning all the shoots of the vines and everything done by hand, and then making like so many different kinds of wine with mostly one variety, which is Pinot Noir, right? So yeah, I loved it there when we went. So I'm gonna go there.
I love it. I love that you picked one too that you visited in winter, but it still like stuck with you of like that feeling of being there and all the cool things that were going on, even when it wasn't in like the biggest, like the best time people would think to visit a wine region.
Oh no, it's just like amazing. There's less people, the winemakers and everybody like have more time for you. It's just great.
Yeah, that's the benefit, isn't it?
Plus, we are in a slow time too. We cannot go like.
But that is true. It's like, yeah, of course, that's when you would visit. Duh. Okay. So now on the flip side, what is a wine region that you would like to visit?
Wine
Loire. Never been to the Loire yet. I haven't.
No, I haven't been in the Loire either. I would probably love to go to New Zealand. I don't know if because I want to go for the wines, but I really want to go to New Zealand. So that would be the one that I would choose. I'm not a fan of like super intense Sauvignon Blanc, but I really like Sauvignon Blanc. Just like that area thing.
Just like New Zealand.
Yeah, New Zealand in general, I think it would be just like
you're like, well, we'd happen to try some wines too, but also I just kind of want to go.
Yeah, I just want to go
there. And yes, Loire Valley. I'm hoping to visit Loire in the fall here. I have a friend that's in France and is in Nantes, I think. So Nantes, I don't speak French, so I have no idea how to pronounce things, but excited to kind of check out that region. I think that'll be very fun.
We drink a lot of wines from there, but we just haven't had the opportunity to go there yet.
Yeah. So. Well, there's so many to pick from. You could never, right? You'll never hit them all. But okay, so now how about like a wine and food pairing that you enjoy or like a go-to? And it can be fancy or super casual. What's a good go-to wine and food pairing?
Go ahead, you start.
Wine and food pairing. I mean, we can just go with the classic fried chicken and sparkling wine, right?
Yes, absolutely. Nothing wrong with that.
I enjoy, let's see.
I like robotic grilling. I'm into that right now. So robotic grilling and maybe
our gruner.
Yeah.
It just goes great with a little bit of spice and Asian style and
Yeah. Okay. So, nice. I like it.
We're both picking that. Yeah.
Well, and you already said fried chicken and sparkling wine. I think that's a great
easy one.
That was okay. And then the last question is for those kind of looking, they want to start getting into wine, but they're on a budget. Are there any regions or styles of wine that is like your go-to to stay under like $15-$20?
I think go to Europe. I mean, literally. No, I mean, not necessarily Europe. I would say it's really difficult to find those prices for small producers in United States. I mean, if you look for bigger companies, definitely you're going to find those prices. But for small producers, because of the price of the grapes and price of living and price of everything, it's really difficult. But if you go to find wines from South America, from Europe, from Australia, it's a little bit easier, even though they are imported. But
Beaujolais,
for
example.
Yeah.
Beaujolais.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Beaujolais, like there's a lot of wines at that price. I would say like in Spain, like you can find like nice Tempranillos that age even here that are like at super low price. Albariños, definitely. Any Albarino here at 15 to that range, $15-$20, it's just gonna be mind blowing. So yeah.
Yeah, no, great answer. And I love it. I ask that question because I think it's a good place for people to start, and then kind of get an idea for things. And then as you start to like appreciate wine and learn what you enjoy, you get to start exploring. And at least that's what happened to me. I started with that, like, there's a picture of me with like barefoot and Moscato, as like a teenager. And then, you move on up. And I think I moved on to like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. It was like $10. And now it's like the whole like exploring wineries. And I don't really bat an eye at spending, $40 on a bottle. I'm like, I know everything that went into this and I know this is, worth it, but you gotta like, it's a little bit of a process to get there. But thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It was so fun to chat with you ladies and learn about your winery and everything there. And I'm looking forward to next trip to Santa Barbara. We'll definitely have to visit, and definitely I'm going to put that Syrah that y'all were talking about I'll be on a lookout for that 2023 when it comes out. But thanks again for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yes,
nice
absolutely.
Talking to you.
All right, well, have a good rest of your day. Cheers.
Me too.
Cheers.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. Now, as always, if you loved it as much as I always do, please take a quick second. I know it just takes a very, very small amount of time. Rate this episode, leave a review for the podcast if you haven't already. It makes such a big impact for me in growing and helping to reach more people. And if you want to help me do that even more, send this podcast to someone that you know that likes wine and might enjoy learning about these California wines by two amazing female winemakers. If you want to try some delicious Santa Rita Hills wine made by these incredible winemakers, head to comingstodreams.com and pick out some delicious bottles to try. Now, I'm a sucker for the Gruner Veltliners, both the still and the sparkling, but you really can't go wrong with any of them. In next week's episode, we'll be doing an overview of Spanish wine. There's a lot to cover, but I'm excited to teach you about this region full of budget-friendly, age-worthy, delicious wines. Thanks again for listening, and as a thank you, I'd like to share my free shopping guide, 15 wines under $15. Simply head to my website, corkandfizz.com, scroll down to the bottom, and join my mailing list. Cheers!